guys, John V from PhoneArena here. Right now you're watching our video review of the Asus PadFone X. Here in the US, this is the first time we're seeing a device from the PadFone line, and the PadFone X is pretty unique just because it's a smartphone that transforms to a tablet with a tablet dock that comes with it, so you get that 2-for-1 functionality. Overall though, it's going to be intriguing to see how consumers here kind of take a liking to this particular form factor. The design of the Asus PadFone X isn't anything astounding. Instead, it comes off rather conventional and generic with its all-plastic construction. Even though it's still pretty manageable to hold in one hand comfortably, it's pretty large in terms of overall size. In fact, the dimensions pretty much match up the Samsung Galaxy S5, which has a larger display. It's not something we tend to see here in the US, but the Asus PadFone X is a dual-functioning device, so it's both a smartphone and tablet combination. Just like on previous Pad phones, the tablet dock has this opening here that accepts the smartphone, so you just slide into place and then you get the tablet experience. We know it sticks out like a sore thumb, but when we look at the design of the tablet dock, it's just very distracting with those very large bezels around the screen. In addition, there's an optional keyboard dock attachment you can pick up for the Asus PadFone X. So you get the advantage of having a full QWERTY layout and a trackpad, but this thing is just a beast of its own in terms of weight. It's pretty heavy. In fact, it's heavier than the tablet and the smartphone together. For its advantage in typing, there are two main issues that we have with the keyboard dock. First and foremost, it doesn't have its own built-in battery, so it's just strictly a Bluetooth keyboard. And secondly, is just the connection here. It's an open slot that pretty much accepts the tablet like so. It slides in, but unfortunately there's no lock to it, so the tablet can actually come off very easily. The display here is a 5-inch 1080p IPS LCD panel, which matches many of the displays we find on today's flagships. Knowing that, it doesn't surprise us that it produces some fine-looking details, very crisp looking. What's most impressive about the display is how accurate it is with color reproduction. It is nearly spot on with every single color. Viewing angles are good with this too, so it maintains its clarity, but has a little bit of a weaker brightness output, so outdoor visibility can be challenging at times. Around the handset trim, we find all the usual stuff. You have the micro USB port down there, the microphone, power button, the volume controls, 3.5mm headset jack, and the noise cancellation mic. In the rear, we have a 13-megapixel Pixel Master camera. It features an f2.0 aperture lens, dual LED flash, and the ability to shoot up to 4K video. The rear casing of the phone can be removed, giving us access to its SIM slot, the micro SD card slot. The battery can't be removed, unfortunately, but we do notice that it features wireless charging. Previous Asus devices were mostly stock Android experiences, but with this, they've updated it to the new Zen UI experience running on top of Android 4.4.2 KitKat. Now visually, it kind of reminds us of Sense just because we take a look at some of the icons, the fonts are kind of similar. It pretty much has a scaled approach to it and overall has a calmer presentation, but nothing really extravagant. Unlike some of the other Android makers out there, Asus doesn't try to oversell the experience. It's more about simplicity than anything else, so you're not going to find any secondary multitasking functions or stuff like that that really sometimes feel redundant. For a new phone, many people view the processor it's using as being last generation, though it's still quite formidable. It's a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor clocked at 2.3 GHz with 2 GB of RAM. So with that, it's still able to handle heavy tasks with no fluff at all. Not surprisingly too is that it handles web browsing with no issues at all. You have 4G LTE connectivity, so you have fast page loads, and on top of that, navigational controls are smooth and buttery. The only music player option here is the Google Play Music application, so there's nothing different about it. It's armed with a single speaker in the rear, so it puts out a decent amount of audio, but its tone sounds a little bit on the mute and flat side. Out of the box, it's missing codec support for things like XVID and DivX, but luckily it plays MPEG-4 and H.264 videos fine with no issues at all, so the experience is more than enjoyable. Hardcore shutterbugs will especially be delighted to find a handful of different shooting modes and manual controls available with the camera app. On top of that, it's pretty fast too when it comes to snapping photos, including HDR ones. Generally speaking, its 13 megapixel Pixel Master camera produces some good looking photos. They are properly exposed and have very natural looking colors, though it suffers from this over sharpening effect, so it tends to soften fine details. At the same time, we see the same qualities with its 1080p video recording qualities, so it's good, but nothing astounding. It even features 4K video recording, but with this, it shoots it at a very choppy rate, and it's very noticeable. And we also find it more prone to artifacting and has a very sensitive exposure. Unfortunately, though, you'd think that details would be improved, but that's not particularly the case, just because we see again that over sharpening effect. Call quality is rather challenging with the Asus PadFone X. Through the earpiece, voices just tend to have a very sharp, unpleasant tone to them, though the volume output is pretty strong and audible. On the other end line, our callers have less issues just because voices are more neutral in tone, but the speakerphone tends to exhibit a very shrill and high-pitched sound. It doesn't have as big of a battery compared to some other devices. In fact, it's only a 2300 milliamp hour one. In our battery benchmark test, it's able to produce a time of a little bit over 5 hours on that, making it rather average. It's more than enough to give us at least 1 day of normal usage, though it takes a little bit over 4 hours for the battery to completely charge. Luckily, the tablet dock has its own internal battery, so when it's in there, it's gonna recharge the device. In a way, we can argue that the Asus PadFone X is that all-in-one device we've been wanting for some time. It's a smartphone with a tablet aspect to it, so you get a lot of functionality out of it. Still, for the diverse functionality we get out of it, it's not a perfect smartphone, so when you compare it against some of the flagship devices, it just doesn't feel as cutting edge as we'd like it to. Still, its saving grace is its price point, and it's absolutely competitive and aggressive. At $200 a tier contract, the Asus PadFone X has a lot to offer just because you're also getting a tablet, so that minimizes the need for additional cost. So if you guys want to learn more about the Asus PadFone X, you could check out our website, PhoneArena.com. It's John V. Thanks for watching.